Hello and welcome to the Rating Room, your weekly ticket to the world of cinema. In today's episode, we are diving deep into the gritty world of crime and intrigue with the British thriller Layer Cake.
The Rating Room. The Rating Room.
The protagonist, who remains unnamed throughout the film, is a successful and savvy cocaine dealer in London. He has plans to retire from the criminal underworld and live a quiet, wealthy life. However, his plans are disrupted when he is tasked by his boss, Jimmy Price, with finding the daughter of a powerful crime lord, Eddie Temple. That is Layer Cake in a nutshell. And Jay, we can't start the rating room without our usual first question. Have you seen this film before, and what did you remember about it?
Yeah, so I've seen the film several times, Andy, and I remember quite a few standout scenes, and I remember there being some really intense moments in the film as well. I remember that Daniel Craig's character and performance was really captivating, actually, because I don't recall seeing many films, if any, before this one, actually, of Daniel Craig's. And you could say this film was his audition for the James Bond role as well. I do recall some plot twist. Plot twist as well, and I remember the final scene in the countryside with the country house. What about you, Andy?
So, this is a new one for me. I knew that it stars Daniel Craig, and then that's it. I know nothing about the film. I knew nothing about the type of film, the genre, the other stars. All I knew is this is a Daniel Craig film. So this is a really blank slate for me.
So this is the second time, isn't it, Andy, that you've been in this situation with Interstellar being the first time?
Indeed.
Yes, our regular listeners will remember that Andy wasn't a big fan of Interstellar. And if I recall, Andy, was that a 3 out of 10?
It was a 3 out of 10, yeah. So the bar is very low. Layer Cake does not have to do much to jump over 3 out of 10, but I guess we'll find out as we discuss.
Yeah, and I must admit, Andy, when we picked this film, I was quite intrigued to see what you thought of it, especially after the situation we had with Interstellar. I was a little bit nervous, but I was quite intrigued, actually, to see what you thought of Layer Cake.
Yeah, the difference with that is I kind of knew what Interstellar was about to an extent. You know, I knew the stars, I knew the genre, I knew what to expect to a certain level, whereas this, I didn't really even have expectations. I didn't look into it beforehand because I didn't want to kind of prejudge it, as it were.
So it could have been a cookery film.
It could have involved cooking and other things of that nature.
So let's get into the film now. As always, we talk about the box office first. So I'm going to kick things off here. Now, the budget was $6.5 million. And the box office was $11.7 million. And as usual, we do adjust the box office in today's money, and that brings it up to $18.9 million. Now, that was due to the film having a very limited run in cinemas in the United States. And this explains why the box office performance is a lot lower than the other films that we've covered this season, but also in previous seasons. Now, in its opening weekend, Layer Cake was only available in 10 theatres, and ranked 35th in the US weekend box office charts. Now, they did open more theatres over the next few weeks and was in 200 theatres by the fourth week, when the film then peaked at 15th.
If we focus on the British weekend box office, things are a little bit differently, probably what you'd expect being a British film. The film opened at number 3 in its first weekend and stayed in the top 5 for the next 3 weekends. And the two films that kept Layer Cake from reaching number 1 in the British box office were the films Wimbledon and Saw.
Now, Andy, I know you've mentioned Saw before, and I've seen the original Saw film. Have you seen Wimbledon before?
I have seen Wimbledon football team play football, and I have seen some real Wimbledon tournaments, but I've not seen the film Wimbledon. It just doesn't appeal to me, I'll be honest.
Doesn't play. So, a little side note here, Andy. When I was first dating my wife years and years ago, I remember Wimbledon being on TV, and I just asked her, I said, "Oh, do you know where Wimbledon is?" You know, thinking she might say, like London or somewhere like that. And then she turned around and said, "Is it in France?" and her geography isn't that great. But I always remember that. That's going back probably about 20 years.
And it was that moment you knew she was the one.
Yeah, the keeper, yes.
Let's dig a little bit deeper. So the film Layer Cake, released in 2004, directed by Matthew Vaughn, with the soundtrack composer being Lisa Gerrard and Ilan Eshkeri.
The film is based on a book by J.J. Connolly, and Layer Cake was a British author's debut novel and was first published in 2000. Now, the screenplay for Layer Cake was also written by J.J. Connolly as well. So that's nice that he got to write the book and also the screenplay. Now, this is Matthew Vaughn's directorial debut, having previously served as a producer on films including Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch and Mean Machine, 3 films that I do enjoy.
Yes, and this one certainly fits the type, as we'll discuss as we get into it. Now, since this, Vaughn has directed a number of films, including Stardust, Kick-Ass, 2 X-Men films and the Kingsman trilogy. His latest film, as at time of recording, is the film Argylle, currently in cinemas, starring Henry Cavill, Bryce Dallas Howard and John Cena. Now, as mentioned in the intro, Daniel Craig's character remains nameless throughout the film, and this brings me on to a question of what should we call him throughout this episode. He's credited as 4X. So, do we call him...
Yeah, it's a shame they didn't do the film credits as XXX, because that would be a lot easier to say. 4X, isn't that like an Aussie beer or lager?
Castlemine 4X, yeah. I remember that from my uni days.
Yeah. But I quite find it interesting, actually, that the character remains nameless throughout the film. I like that little play. Now, Michael Gambon plays gangster Eddie Temple, and Gambon had a successful acting career that spanned over 6 decades. Now, you might probably recognise him. Well, I think you will recognise him because he was featured in Hogwarts as the head teacher, Professor Dumbledore, in the Harry Potter films. And also in Layer Cake, we have Tom Hardy, and this is one of Tom Hardy's earlier roles, and he plays the role of Chemist Clarkey, and he looks very young in this film. And before this one, he actually previously appeared in roles Black Hawk Down and Star Trek Nemesis.
Yeah, very young Tom Hardy, and his name's quite a way down the credits as well, so he's not listed as one of the main actors. Now, Irish actor Colm Meaney plays the part of Gene. He's probably best known for his role as Miles O'Brien in the Star Trek The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine series. We have a familiar actor playing the role of Sidney, the boyfriend of Sienna Miller's character. That actor is, of course, Ben Whishaw. You might recognise Whishaw from a number of films, but we've mentioned him briefly, I would say, during season 1 of the podcast, as he plays Q in 3 James Bond films alongside Daniel Craig. So we have our all-important Bond connection, which we probably have at least one on pretty much every episode, don't we? In some fashion or other. Now, a quick side note, Barbara Broccoli stated that Craig's performance in Layer Cake made her consider him for the Bond role. On the DVD commentary, Vaughn comments that Craig wants to be James Bond. So this kind of planted the seeds, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, if it wasn't for this one, we might have never seen Daniel Craig as James Bond. Now, this was Sienna Miller's 4th appearance in a film, and this was her breakthrough role. Now, Miller later appears in another film by Vaughn, Stardust, which is a fantastic film. I like Stardust. And to take that song from Stardust, which I cannot remember the name, was my wedding song. You know, where you have your first dance, Andy.
Rule the World.
That is it, yes. Yes. Well, you know my early onset dementia there, Andy.
Should I edit? Yeah, I was going to say, should I edit the part out where you say you can't remember your wedding song? Jay definitely remembers this wedding song. What was it called, Jay? Tell the listeners.
Rule the World.
There we go.
The film received a number of nominations, including one for Best Promising Newcomer, BAFTA Award, and 4 Empire Award nominations in the Best British Actor, Best British Film, Best Newcomer, and Best British Director. Now, Matthew Vaughn picked up the best British, lot of best there, Best British Director Award at the Empire Awards.
That's easy for you to say. Now, I've got more beeping to do here because I have to give this next stat. An article from 2020 states that Layer Cake has an average of 2 instances of the word per screen minute, which makes this film 54th on the all-time list of films to feature the word So it's, I guess you could say, number 54 on the list.
Yeah, and that's an interesting fact, and I think it's interesting, and my wife constantly, I know I've said this before, but my wife constantly takes the mickey out of me for keep using interesting, Andy.
Well, I'll keep using the word then, shall I?
I don't think you're going to find that fact in many film podcasts, Andy. So this is what makes our podcast unique. Now, as usual, we're going to talk, spend a little time talking about the film. Now, I think the opening scene is really memorable, actually, because you've got Daniel Craig's voiceover giving the audience some background to the drug scene as well. And we are introduced to 4X. Well, how are we going to call this, Andy? Triple X, 4X?
In my notes, I just kept referring to him as Craig because, having not seen the film before, I was just waiting for his name to be revealed. I didn't know that it was a thing until the very end, so I just referred to him as Craig or Craig's character. But we can call him 4X if you want.
I just don't want any trademark people to come after us, Andy, on our little podcast. But I will mix things up. And so we're introduced to Craig's character and his crew, and we see FC UK in quite a lot of branding here, which I thought was really interesting. And then, you know, we've done some research here, like we usually do, and FC UK gave permission for the film to use their branding in the film. Now, that's thanks to one of the executive producers on the film, who happened to be the founder of the French Connection UK brand.
There you go. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Now, my initial comment of seeing Craig on screen was that he looked quite skinny, or at least skinnier than I'm used to seeing him. You know, having seen him in the Bond films predominantly. He's a bit of a beefcake, but not in this. I thought he was a little bit skinnier than usual. We're also introduced to the criminals who have gone to Amsterdam to raid a drug manufacturing plant. And in parallel, 4X talks about his plan to leave the drug scene. Now, I thought this whole setup, where you've kind of got Craig's view, you've got the Amsterdam thing happening, kind of, there's a bit of back and forth, really sets the scene for the whole film really well. And there's no messing about. It's no lengthy, convoluted intro. There's nothing to kind of get your mind around. It's just, bam, we're into it. This is what the film's about. Let's get on with it. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and I think it's quite unique, really, because he is essentially about to leave the scene. And obviously what happens in the film occurs because he's talking about not being in the game for like forever. And I think he quotes he wants to get to 1 million or something. And then he's ready to get out. So I think that's really interesting. Now, you know, something does go wrong, unfortunately, for Craig, because in Amsterdam, something has gone really wrong, but at the moment we don't know what that is. So we do find out later on in the film. Now, they go to a very posh country club to see Jimmy. Now, Jimmy needs a favour, and it's a job for Eddie Temple. Eddie Temple's daughter has gone missing, so we don't know who Eddie Temple is yet. Well, we've not met him yet. So triple X, 4X, and the lads go to see the Duke about the 1 million pills for sale. So that's a lot of pills. And I think this is a really, really tense scene, and it's really well performed by everyone here. It's really tense. I really like this bit. And 4X bumps into Sydney, who turns out he's the nephew of the Duke.
Yeah, so things are starting to fall into place here. And of course, with Sydney on screen, that means we've got Bond and Q together. Kind of a bit of foreshadowing, you would say. Now, as well as Sydney, we're also introduced to, I guess she's Sydney's girlfriend, played by Sienna Miller. And she immediately catches the eye of 4X. And as she leaves, she slips him a piece of paper, which I guess we'll find out what's on that fairly soon. But in the meantime, they're off to meet the Scousers, Trevor and Shanks. They're not happy about something, and they start to talk about what's happened in Amsterdam. And then we kind of have a bit of a cutback scene to what happened with the Duke and the Serbians. The Serbians being hardcore criminals in organised crime. And yeah, things are not going to plan, to say the least. And Mr. Price, is not happy at all.
He's not a happy bunny at all. And we have a scene here where the camera cuts to an iron. And we don't find out what that is, but we do find out why. That is important later on. So they do find Kinky's dead body, but the daughter isn't there. So Eddie Temple's daughter is still missing at this point. It looks like Kinky was murdered, but made to look like a drug overdose. So things are getting a bit suspicious here. Now, later on, they're in a cafe, and a bloke called Freddie comes in, and he's looking really worse for wear. And he asks Morty for some money. And, he sits down and have, I think it's his breakfast with Craig and Morty. And this scene is really, really brutal. And Morty essentially gives Freddy a really bad beating. And then when this is happening as well, we see Duke is murdered, but we don't see who's killed Duke yet.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in multiple locations. Just going back to the cafe scene, I agree with you. I thought it was a really, really well done scene. Escalated very quickly, didn't it? Now, at this stage, we don't really know what's going on and why Morty reacted like he did, but a very, very well done scene.
The thing I found difficult was, it's a beating, and then you think it's all going to be over, and then he goes and gets the jug of steaming, I think it's tea because the tea bags come out, and that just tops it off, and then they obviously make a quick escape, don't they?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But soon thereafter, 4X meets up with Gene, and Gene gives him the backstory about Freddy and Morty, and why Morty ended up going to prison. Now, I noted a quote in another scene around this time. I'm going to say it, and then if we need to cut it, we'll cut it. But I thought it was quite funny when they were basically questioning whether one of the characters in the flashback was gay or not. And his response was, females is for p***s.
When that happened, Andy, when I was rewatching this, I thought you might like that line. And then when I saw and heard that you just quoted it, it does give me a little smile, because I thought you'd like that one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Now, it is a good one. There are a few good quotes, actually. Now, there is a funny scene with the gun display cabinet as well, and Craig acting like a hitman, kind of like acted a bit like a spy. And like I said earlier on, this is kind of his audition for the James Bond film. Now, Dragon rings Craig's character, and he's looking for the drugs.
Yeah, this phone call I thought was quite amusing as well. Basically, I didn't write word for word, but basically what happens is Dragon says he wants his drugs back, and Craig's character says, well, why don't we have some breakfast and talk about this like civilized men or sort of thing, and says, do you know where I live? And Dragon says no. Says, well, fuck off, and puts the phone down. It's just a brilliant way to end the phone call, I thought.
It is a good way, but also I think it's quite intelligent, because he knows that he doesn't actually know where he lives. So he's got his mobile number, but he doesn't actually know where Craig's character lives at the moment, so that's good. Now, Sienna Miller is looking hot in this film, and Craig's character has a hot date with her, but things don't go to plan. So I remembered this bit, so I knew this was building up.
Yeah, they're in the hotel room, and she goes to slip into something more comfortable, as they would say. It didn't look comfortable, to be honest. It looked quite tight in places. But there's a knock on the door. Room service is here, so that's nice. And it's not room service, is it? It's not quite what he ordered.
It's not, and in fact, it's a couple of Eddie's Temple's goons, and they take him to the rooftop as well. And he kind of, I think he opens his eye. Oh, they take the mask off his face, and he's laid down, isn't he, over the top of the roof with his head over. So that's a scare, especially someone for me, who is scared of heights. Now, Temple gives Daniel Craig character a brief update on Jimmy, and about the dodgy investment that led to Jimmy losing $13 million.
Yeah, the plot is definitely thickening at this point, because 4X takes a ride with Temple and his goons, and they listen to a recording, and it's Jimmy and a police officer Turns out Jimmy, this criminal mastermind, is actually an informant for the police. Jimmy set him up and gives him up to the police for 12 months.
Yeah, so that shocked Daniel Craig's character, and 4X goes and kills Jimmy after he's had a night swim and he's watering his garden plants. His house looks very nice, and this is really interesting because now he's more that he's at the beginning of the film he's talked about being a businessman, and now he's more than a businessman. He's neck deep in this now. He's neck deep in the criminal underground, but you do see him. It's hit him hard. Because we see him like mixing drugs and alcohol, and he's trying to come to terms with what he's done.
Yeah, he's almost like drinking himself into a bit of a stupor, isn't he? He's in shock. But something tells me killing is a skill that might come in handy for Craig in the future. Now, from there, Craig's character wants his money. So he goes to see his accountant. That's where you'd go for all your money. Gets to the office, it's completely empty. He's cleared it out, and he kind of slumps in the corner, crestfallen because, the money's gone, as has the accountant. So off he goes to see Temple again. Now, Temple offers to buy these pills for £3 million, and they've arranged to have them delivered to his warehouse on Tuesday. And a little funny line that Temple says when they're organising the delivery is something along the lines of, even drug dealers don't work weekends.
Yeah, that is a good one. And 4X and Morty go to see Gene, but Gene gives 4X a really brutal beating, and Morty's locked outside. Now, Daniel Craig character does convince Gene and Morty to listen to the recording of Jimmy, and that's the recording where they find out that he's an informer, and they do believe him now.
Yeah, he's a right mess though, isn't he? So they're all, after this revelation has come out, they're all sat at I think it's the breakfast bar, isn't it, in the apartment, having a bit of a drink, and Gene's talking about that he kept the gun from a crime years ago because it was his favourite, and I just found this amusing when Morty says, "I hope you don't tell the other guns you've got favourites."
It is another funny little quote, Andy, you've got there. And the next day we see Craig's character, and he's meet the Scouser hitman at the train station, and they go to meet Dragon. Now, things don't go to plan though again, and Dragon hits the hitman. Oh, sorry, I say he hits the hitman, he kills the hitman.
This was a really, really good scene. It really took me by surprise as well. Just the way that they're kind of peering out in the bushes and waiting for Dragon to appear. He's going to appear at any minute, and then bang, the shot from out of nowhere. It's like, whoa, what just happened? Really, really enjoyed that. Now, later on, he meets up with Gene and Morty, and it turns out that Gene and his goon were the ones that killed the Duke and his girl, and he's got their dead bodies in the freezer.
Yeah, and this little fact actually comes in handy. So Daniel Craig's character goes to negotiate with Duke's men, but armed police raid the place. Now, the police take the drugs away, and they manage Craig's character and the Duke's men. They manage to escape via the boat, and 4X goes to meet Dragon, and he's brought the freezer box as well. However, it turns out the raid was a setup, and 4X used the two guys that we saw earlier on who were looking for Eddie Temple's daughter. Now, Andy, obviously I said I've seen this before, so I remember this plot twist. What did you think of this when you first? Because the two men that were kind of like working undercover at the beginning, and then they were looking for Eddie Temple's daughter. They've got quite distinctive voices, even though they changed their voices. Did you pick that up? Because it focused on their feet, didn't it? And you didn't see their faces until a little bit later on.
I didn't guess that's what was going on. I just assumed it was a real raid, and things had gone pear-shaped. But yeah, those two characters are pretty funny. I like the earlier scene. I know we didn't touch on it in that much detail, but where they're in the club and they're chatting up the American women by pretending to be not pretending to be royalty, but they're pretending to be like rich yuppie types, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah, they're a good double act. They are. But back to this raid, which turns out was not a raid after all. The plans work nicely for 4X, and he's got the pills for Temple, so things are looking up again for him. So he meets with with Temple to swap the pills for the £3 million, but yet again, things are not going according to plan. Temple is keeping the pills for himself, and he gives Forex a little talk about the layer cake and says he's just getting into this business. So he's kind of double-crossed him, hasn't he, really? He's double-crossed him, but with a bit of a pep talk of sorts.
Yeah, and I remember watching this for the first time, and I didn't see this comment, so I think it's considering all the things that Daniel Craig's character has managed to overcome to deliver this and get the Serbians off his back. You think it's going to play out nicely for him, but this was another little twist that originally I didn't see coming. Now, we have a scene here where we find out what's in the freezer box, and it's the Duke's head. And then we also, like the camera kind of pans out, and we witness the scale of the Serbian drug business. So even though they had 1 million pills stolen at the beginning of the film by the Duke and his men and girlfriend, they could have easily kind of taken that hit, but obviously it's all about reputation. And for them, that wasn't even probably a day's work, in terms of that manufacturing plant, was it?
It's like finding change down the sofa and saying you've stolen money from them, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, Forex decides to fill the void that Jimmy's death has left, and we later see him at the country club. So this is the same country club that we had at the beginning when he met with Jimmy and co, and they give a toast to the new king. However, Forex walks away from being a king, so I don't know if he's ever explained like how much time has elapsed here. However, Sydney makes a surprise visit, and he shoots Daniel Craig's character on the steps, and he lays there dying, and the film ends there. So it's not an ending that you would expect, Andy. Or what did you expect, having not seen this before?
I thought it was a really shocking ending, to be honest. I thought it was really well done. You'd argue he deserved it because, he did still steal Sydney's girl, after all. So Sydney's probably justified. So the ending itself was really well done, really surprised me. What I would say, though, is the last few minutes of the film, so kind of from where Temple takes the drugs away to this, and he's taken over from Jimmy in the meantime, felt a little bit rushed, like it just jumped from the drugs, now he's taken over, now he's giving up, now he's dead. Probably could have strung that out a little bit longer if I'm, but that's kind of just me being over critical, I guess. But a really, really good ending.
I think it's valid, Andy, because, thinking back about it, a lot has happened in the film, and obviously we're going to talk about the runtimes very soon. But yeah, after you said, the warehouse scene with Eddie Temple, it's probably not even 5 minutes, and it's come to a close, in terms of like the country club. He's retiring now, and then he gets shot. It does feel, as you said there, it does feel a bit rushed.
Yeah, I think so. But doesn't take too much away from the film, I don't think. I think it's still a very, very good ending. Now, research tells me that there is an alternate ending, which is available on YouTube, and it shows Forex and Sienna Miller's character, I believe her name's Tammy, from memory, driving off in a red convertible sports car. Apparently Sony tried to get this happy ending in the film, but Vaughn filmed the final ending without telling the studio. Vaughn decided to use his ending for the test screening audience, and it received a positive reception.
I think that's an interesting fact there, Andy. And I've watched the alternative ending, and I must admit I preferred the version that was in the film. I don't think being in the criminal underground doesn't necessarily guarantee you a happy ending, so I think it is quite fitting, really, the ending that he has.
I would tend to agree. I haven't seen the alternative ending as described. I should probably look that up at some point. But from how it's written, and thank you to our crack team of researchers for pulling that together, I think the way they ended is the way they should have ended it. I think that was the way to go. So I'm in full agreement that was the right thing to do. And that brings us to the end of that particular section. So here on the Rating Room, we need to talk ratings. So Jay, I'll let you kick us off. Why don't you give me your score out of 10?
I've seen this film probably less than 5 times, no more than 5 times. And I remembered really enjoying this film, and obviously, we said you've not watched this one before, and I was really keen to watch this one again, and I wasn't disappointed. There were some bits that I would say I probably didn't remember, but I found I watched it all in one go, and I just really, really enjoyed it. And I was thinking, it's kind of got me wanting to watch more crime / gangster films again. I used to watch a lot when I was younger. So in terms of the rating, I gave it a very solid 8 out of 10. I nearly went with 9, actually, but I went with 8, just because it was a very good film. It doesn't have enough Tom Hardy, but like you pointed out, and this doesn't have any kind of impact on the score. Daniel Craig's physique is very, very different to when he was in Bond, and it was very weird, like you pointed out earlier on. Having seen Daniel Craig recently in things like the Glass Onion and the James Bond films, he has very different physique here. So that was quite surprising, actually, 'cause I didn't remember that. But I really, really enjoyed it. And we apparently the rights to a sequel is owned by an actor, British actor, Jason Statham. Is it Statham? He does
Jason
like action. Statham, yeah.
He
has the rights.
Fast and Furious and The Transporter and a few other action
Yes.
films. He's local to you,
Is he?
Born in Shirebrook, just down the road from where we are.
Yes. Thank you for giving my location away, Andy. All our fans will be paparazzi will be following us around now. No, so long-winded way there, Andy, to say 8 out of 10. I really, really did enjoy this, and I love it when we watch a film that one of us like and actually enjoy watching it. It's nice. And to be fair, we're going to go through the ratings later on. This season hasn't been disappointing for me in our mixtape season 3, so I'm really, really happy with this one, and I'm quite intrigued to find out what you thought of this one.
Well, let me tell you. So last time I had an unknown film was Interstellar. Didn't really enjoy it at all, despite a tremendous score from your side of things. And again, you've given this one a really, really good score, 8 out of 10. Now, I didn't go 8 out of 10, but I'm not far behind with 7. I really enjoyed the film. Thought it was very, very good. There's not really a lot to pick apart with it. I mentioned the ending maybe could have been stretched out a little bit. Those last few scenes could have stretched out a little bit more. Very enjoyable, very well acted, good performances throughout. I think first time viewing maybe skews my figures a little bit in that some of the more memorable scenes were not necessarily iconic scenes, or were not kind of ones that I would quote years and years in the future. Sort of thing, I watched this last night, I've taken notes, that's why I can remember certain things. So it kind of falls in the very good, not great category for me, based on first watching. I think over time it might be one of those where I look a bit more fondly on it, but I really enjoyed it. And you mentioned, it's made you want to see some other films. We mentioned some of Vaughan's other films, or that he produced on things like Lock, Stock and Snatch, I think was one of them as well. They're both excellent films, and it makes me want to revisit those kind of ones as well, because it's a proper geezer film, isn't it? And I do enjoy that. But yeah, really enjoyed the film. 7 out of 10. A really good effort.
And going back to what your point, Andy, Lock, Stock and films like Snatch are really good. And Snatch, I watched last year, actually. Brad Pitt playing a traveller, isn't he? I think he even might be Irish.
Yeah, I love Brad Pitt in that film. The thing that I always remember from that is when he's talking to Stephen Graham's character, and he's like, "Do you like dags?" What? Do you like dags? Oh, dogs. Yeah, I like dags.
So we've given you our rating, so 8 out of 10 for me and Andy, 7. Now, what do the good folks at IMDb think? And I can tell you, they think 7.3 out of 10. So consistent with our scores.
Yeah, and Rotten Tomatoes were a little bit more generous, but again in the same sort of ballpark. 81% on the tomatometer with an 84% audience score. So very respectable scores all round from the three big sources of movie ratings, that being IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, and now the Rating Room. Firmly established in the top three, if I do say so myself. Now, let's end things as we always do with our pièce de résistance, and that is, of course, the rank bank. I don't know if you touched on this earlier in the film, in the episode or not, actually, because I've forgotten 35 minutes ago, or whatever it was. But we're going to start with the runtimes. Jay, why don't you give the listeners an overview of the runtimes?
Yeah, so I didn't say how long the runtime was. I kind of alluded to the runtimes earlier on. And in season 3, in season 1 and 2, we used to mention the runtime earlier in the podcast, but we took that out of this season. We just cover it now in the rank bank. Now, Layer Cake, surprisingly, because it doesn't feel like this at all, 1 hour 45 minutes, it just flew by for me. And that means it goes in at number 3 in season 3. So Interstellar out there at 2 hours 49 minutes. They flew by for Andy, surely. Die Hard at number 2, Layer Cake at number 3, Hangover 5 minutes shorter at number 4, and Elf popping up the bottom of the table in terms of the runtimes. Andy, do you want to remind our listeners about the box off rank performance, and where does that leave us in the charts?
Yeah, so Layer Cake, just a reminder, budget of $6.5 million, which is by far the smallest budget we've had of our season 3 mixtape so far. Worldwide box office, $11.7 million. Nowhere near anything else on the list. Like, not even close. And the adjusted box office doesn't really help either, because it's $18.9 million adjusted. So just about $340 something million shy of second to last place. So it's comfortably in 5th place of 5 with, on the surface, what appears quite low box office figures, but it was at least profitable.
Yeah, indeed, and like we mentioned earlier on in the episode, it's impacted by the limited run it has. And for me, when you talk about the adjusted box office, Andy, there's no way there's like 300 million's worth difference between Layer Cake and Die Hard and Elf. For me, it's purely, this is limited because of the cinema run, the theatre run.
Yeah, it deserves more. The kids might say these days, it deserves its flowers.
I've never heard that before.
That's because I'm younger than you, Jay. I'm down with the kids.
Well, my teenage son keeps telling me stuff, and he's like, what do you mean, like all the lingo? And then I just feel old, because I think of like when I was young and then telling my parents, because he keeps saying, oh, it's sick, and he's like, are you sick? No, it's sick. He's like, oh. And then he said something about, he's talking about some new clothes he got, and he said, I can't remember what he said, so don't quote me, but he said like, oh, this is so dry, or this is so crumbled, or something. And I like looked at him, and he meant, oh, that means it's like really slick, really good. And he's like, he's talking another language. I just feel really old. He's 15, and he's just got into fashion. And it's
your son like, becoming a Cockney gangster type?
It's funny because I went somewhere, and listeners, I'm originally from Essex, and Andy is from the Midlands, and we both live in the Midlands now. And I went somewhere, and I was talking to this woman, and she was like, oh, you've got an accent, where are you from? So I said, oh, I'm originally from Essex. Bearing in mind, I moved up from Essex when I was 6 or 7 years old, and now I'm 42. And people still pick out, some words there's some words, like my wife will say, that it's like my Cockney comes through. And I think it's like, especially when I'm stressing out, I will see something, and my wife will like moan at me saying, oh, your Cockney's coming out. But yes. Anyway, I've really digressed there, Andy. So, I best get back onto the rank bank.
Yeah, you were talking about getting your Cockney out.
Now, the rank bank. So, as always now in season 3, where the mixtape season, we are doing the film rankings by genre. So this is the first film we've got in our drama and thriller rankings. So just to remind everyone, I gave Layer Cake 8 out of 10, and therefore, because this is the first film in our drama and thriller, it goes in at number 1. Andy?
Yep, first film for the drama and thriller genre, 7 out of 10 for me, so it's in first place as things stand, but we will be having more films fill in this genre and all the others as the season rolls on, so keep listening in future weeks for new ones to be added to the mix to see how they compare. But that was quite a nice trip down to the southern part of England and the gangster world. So probably time to end things before we get taken out by a dragon and his mates. So thank you everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed what we had to share with you today.
Yeah, and you can send any questions, suggestions, feedback that you might have via our social media channels or by reaching out to us at theratingroom@gmail.com.
Don't forget, we've got the website up and running, theratingroom.com, and we've also got our YouTube channel where you can find these episodes, clips of other episodes, short. There's a whole bunch of stuff on the YouTube channel. You should really check it out if you're a fan of the podcast and a fan of TV, movies and films, because we've got all sorts on there. Check it out at The Rating Room.
You can find us on all major social media sites by searching for at The Rating Room. And make sure you subscribe to our channels and you can stay up to date with the latest news. And remember, if there's any films or TV shows that you want us to watch and give us our view on these, do let us know.
Now, it's that time of year, isn't it, Jay, where love is in the air. Valentine's Day is around the corner, and I've got an idea. I think we should spend Valentine's Day together talking about one of the better romantic comedy films, I think, from the world of cinema, as we go back to a favourite from season 2, and that being Mr. Tom Hanks. But this is a film we didn't cover in season 2, and it is You've Got Mail. So, Jay, will you be my Valentine?
Yes, Andy, I will. I can't think of anything better than spending Valentine's evening with a middle-aged man.
And our hundreds of thousands and millions of listeners as well.
Hundreds of thousands, yes.
So we'll be there next week, where we'll be giving you all the love that we can. Thanks for listening, everyone.